fifth generation Australian. I converted to Islam about 20 years ago. I have 5 children, which is enough to stress anyone out.
It is.
One of my children, my eldest son, is on the autism spectrum with intellectual disability, and he has recently been diagnosed with a mental health condition. And myself, I do have a mental health condition as well.
So you're dealing with some big challenges in your life.
They are big challenges, but I think everyone has their own challenges. It's just how we deal with it. I suppose for me, a few years ago, they were just part of everyday life. And I didn't realise why I'd get upset over different things and wouldn't be able to cope with different things. But now, through the help of ways of managing my own, anxiety, depression, I'm able to see that, this is part of everyday living. We're going to have downs, but we just keep going as well. Yeah.
So can you tell me how you came to that understanding? Because you said you didn't have it to start with. So
No.
Tell us a little bit about the story of that.
Well, basically what happened is my anxiety and depression are linked to post-traumatic stress that I had when I was a kid. And one of the triggers, unbeknown to me at the time, was when I had my 5th child.
Right.
And with that, I ended up in hospital. And it was then that I had to face that I did have, mental health issues, mental illness, and I had to, deal with it and find a way to manage it.
I wonder, would you tell me a little bit about what happened that led you into therapy? Like, what were some of the symptoms and the things that you were really experiencing when you were depressed?
I mean, basically, there were suicidal thoughts.
Right.
That definitely was suicidal, no good, fearful about, not being a good mum.
Right.
Being a bad wife, things like that, and it was starting to feel like I was losing all reality.
Right.
And as they said when I went to hospital, I was kind of regressing back to my childhood in a good way.
Yeah.
And I suppose the rest I prefer not to really talk about anymore, because I have to admit, I don't know if people realise, but just going into hospital itself becomes a traumatic event in its own right.
Yeah. Especially when you've got some children dependent on you and you're worried about them, what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
But also, it's terrifying to think that you're so sick that you have to be hospitalised.
Yeah, well, it's not so much because I got to the stage I didn't care how sick I was, because I didn't... that part didn't have any value for me anymore.
Right.
But why it was traumatic is because I had lost control. I did not know who I was.
Wow.
And that was the part that I suppose to this day really freaks me out.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I can understand why you don't want to go back and revisit that.
Yeah.
What you're painting, though, is a very severe form of depression, and the suicidal thoughts are indicative of that.
Yeah. But in Islam, it's wrong to want to try and do something, commit suicide or something like that. But at the same time, it is something that it's taken a while for some people to understand it more. And I've had cultural barriers to overcome my mental illness as well, because there were some people in the Muslim culture, I'll say, that, were thinking, oh, well, the fact that you had suicidal thoughts, you were letting evil get into you.
Right. That's another judgment, isn't it?
It was. Yeah. And people were scared to be around me.
So can you tell us about your passion and what you're doing?
Well, as I said right at the beginning, I do have a son with autism, and it's not just my mental illness that has picked up some stigma. There's also the stigma for disability within the Muslim community, and it's found at times people have excluded my son from activities, and I've really wanted to challenge that in the community and, find out why do people have this fear of being around him, or the opposite is that they'd be over protective. I was like, oh, he has autism, shame, poor thing.
Yeah,
It very, yeah. So I really wanted to investigate this and to find out more about it. I undertook studies. I'm now a qualified welfare worker.
Right.
I have gone to university, but I'm kind of juggling the opportunities that are available now at within the work environment and volunteer environment compared to my study capacities. And then what's happening in the family as well.
I was going to say, you've got a few things on your plate at home.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're starting to create more awareness.
That's right.
Because what I have found with my research is that the community, it's not that they're not wanting to include people with mental illness or people with disability. It's the fact they don't understand how to.
They don't know how to. And I think also when people don't understand how to behave towards someone with a difference, no matter what that difference is, we get self-conscious and we don't know what to do, so it's easier to either avoid or push them away without maybe even intending it to.
Sometimes that's the thing.
Sometimes we can be quite aggressive, but it's our defensiveness.
With autism, it's hard to develop natural friendships.
Yeah, the social side of things.
It is. And we've been trying to encourage and support him to get friends within the community. And I had mentioned this because we don't have many. There's a few youth activities, but not many around. And me working, my husband's very busy working all the time, so that's very hard to get him involved in activities. So I've asked the community for a bit of support.
Right.
The problem was, one person I mentioned it to, they said they didn't understand that he needed people his own age, and it was like, oh look, we can look after him.
Yes.
He didn't need looking after.
That's not what you meant, yeah.
So these are challenges that we've had to overcome. But at the same time, it's not because they're not wanting to.
No.
It's they're fearful of what is my role, what is my responsibility when no one's giving me information.
Yeah, they don't know. What I'm hearing, though, is a woman who's changed her thinking towards herself, is being more friendly and gentle on herself.
Yes.
Is that right?
I mean, I still do have a lot of negative thoughts myself.
Right.
Things that I'm always managing, I mean, we all have it to a degree. But for me, it's always like those kind of internal thoughts that we have. Some people might call them voices, but
the sort of self-talk.
It is, and it's always saying, I'm a failure at this, I'm a failure at that, and it's always quite negative. And I'm challenging that most times.
Can you talk about how you learnt to become aware of that? Because I think a lot of people, especially those who are vulnerable to depression, do have a lot of negative self-talk.
Yes.
But often it's hard to hear it because it's with us all the time. And when you learn to separate from it and observe it, that for me has been what's helped me to stop it.
It has, but it's something that doesn't happen overnight.
No.
And I think you've probably experienced
That's
the
right.
same. It doesn't happen overnight, and you really do need support, I believe. It really helps to have someone who is a professional who you can talk this through with to help you identify with it. But for me, it's kind of, as soon as I hear something bad about myself within my own head, I evaluate that. Is that a negative thought? Is that a positive thought? If it's negative, then for me, I then sit there and look at, is there any real validity to that?
So you question it now.
I question it. Yeah. And then if there's no validity, then I self-talk and say, this is wrong, look at all the proof.
Great. So you counter it.
Yeah, but it doesn't always work.
No.
But at the same time, you keep trying.
Yeah.
And I suppose for myself too, and I don't know if it's affected you yourself, please clarify, but I find myself that because my mental illness was attributed to my upbringing, it's fearful that, the same thing is going to be happening to them.
Yes, you feel protective of them and hope that it's not going to be something that... Well, it's interesting for me because I came from a family where my sisters and my mother and my grandmother all struggled with depression.
Yeah.
And I can see now that the patterns we learned as women in some ways fed that. So I've been really concerned about passing on those ways of thinking and habits to my children as well.
Yeah.
But I also know that their world is a different world, and that in my lifetime I've grown and changed, and I have to trust that they will learn some of the good things too that I've learnt and passed on to them.
But I think the biggest thing I've really wanted to relay to my kids is that for them, they will be, bringing in some of the same things. My mental health will be affecting them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as long as they're aware and get the right support when they need it, they'll be fine.